Science is Real, and this segment covers climate change.
Well, here we are again. Today we're talking about this thing of science is real. And something that is, to me, it's just as ridiculous as saying science is real, which really doesn't say anything. But they went from global warming to climate change. Climate change, now what does that say? Well, and they're talking about CO2, of course. CO2, so climate change. So if the climate goes up, hotter, then it's CO2. And if climate goes down, then it gets colder, then CO2. And so if climate stays the same, CO2. If any kind of weather patterns change a little bit, CO2. I remember Pat Paulson back when I was a kid. He would run for the president. It was always inflation. The answer was always inflation. It's so ridiculous. It said climate change says absolutely nothing. I mean, how can we be? I can see how maybe you get duped by science is real. That says a little more than climate change says nothing. But anyway, so what I did is some people. Let me just give you an example. Some people will see this chart. And I'll make it go, oh my gosh, look what's going to happen. I mean, CO2 levels are going up. We're going to die in 12 years, people. We got to tell the children and the grandchildren, we got to stop it right now. It may be too late. Oh my goodness gracious, what are we going to do? But I sit here and I'm John McCamick, and I just kind of look at things and say, we've been duped so much. It's just another one of those things. That's the way. That's my attitude. It shouldn't be. We should be able to trust people in what they say. And some people say, well, they're lying. Well, I have a tendency to try to stay away from that terminology. I try to keep it nice and gentle and family friendly. And so I just say those people that say that should be suspect. So once you see that graph and you get all excited, well, is there another way of looking at it? Is there another graph, for instance, that kind of mirrors that graph? So I got on the internet the other day, and I was trying to find a graph that went from 0 to the present day. And it is sometimes difficult to find, but I found one that had a sliding scale so I could put the beginning date, any date I want, so I put it on 0. And to today's date, and it kind of mirrored it. So let's look at that. Now this graph has to do with population growth. Oh my goodness, look at this, population growth. We're going to hit the homostatic plateau, and when we hit the homostatic plateau, this earth is going to crush us. This is going to eliminate humans. We got to do something now. We got to do something to tell our children. They're going to die, and maybe too late. Oh, what are we going to do? Do you see what I'm saying? We could take any kind of data and dramatize it and scare people, but what is the truth? So what's the main difference between these two charts? As you can see, in my opinion, it has more to do with population growth. They both track each other. So which one's the truth? What is the truth? So what I want to do is make it as easy and as clear as I possibly can that population growth has a lot more to do with CO2 levels than just fossil fuels. And also that the natural phenomena, I want you to go to my global warming video that's on my website, or just go to Rumble, Truth University, and see my global warming video that focuses on natural phenomena. But I want you to focus on human intervention on this one to show you that it's not just fossil fuels. Thank you.
So I just wanted to show a comparison between the increase in CO2 versus the increase in population over approximately the same period of time. Now, according to Wikipedia, the Industrial Revolution started around 1760, and when I looked at some of these graphs, most of the graphs talking about CO2, it starts around 1760, the Industrial Revolution, right at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And at that time, it was 278 parts per million, and it increased 50% to 417 parts per million. Now, in that same time period, the population, according to this website, in 1760 was 770 million versus 2020 at 7,794,798,739. So the CO2 increased by 50%, 1.5 times. But the population growth at the same time increased 10 times increase, with a total percent increase of 912%. So you can see that there's a tremendous increase in population, but relatively speaking, CO2 levels was pretty insignificant. Now, does that increase in CO2 that different? Like I said, I believe it's a trace gas and a heavy gas, and I think we're putting way too much emphasis on it. And if we're going to put emphasis on something, it's not just fossil fuel, it's more of this world population. So we need to do something about world population if you want to control CO2, if you really believe that that is the issue. For me, by far, number one is natural phenomena. In my global warming lesson, you'll notice that I had talked about cycles, and these cycles, there's times when the environment, the atmosphere, the temperatures go up, and there's times it goes down. There's several big cycles that last sometimes 40,000 years, like the ice ages and stuff. So these are long cycles, and sometimes they intersect with each other. So we could be in for a long period of increased heat. So we'll talk about that more in a second. But the next one is, as far as human intervention, it has to do with population growth. Population growth, as you saw in the previous thing, population growth is extreme acceleration in population growth versus the CO2 levels. Again, we focus a lot on cars, on fossil fuels, but that's just a portion of even our section. Natural phenomena by far the greatest, but as far as human intervention, cars are a part of it. But then we talk about power. Well, not all power comes from oil and coal. Now we have hydro, nuclear, and we're moving into wind and solar. So we're being better. We're trying to work better and get away from the independence of oil and coal for our energy. But I think there's still a time period that we will be using coal and oil. And then 3 is more animals, including humans, breathing out CO2. Just the mere numbers of us now, that huge increase of all those people breathing and animals breathing out CO2. And then we talked about deforestation. There's less CO2 being removed from the atmosphere because there's less trees, not just from the buildings and furniture and that type of thing, but just clearing land to build all these projects and housing and all this. So all these contribute to the CO2 level, not just fossil fuels. Fossil fuel, to me, is just a sliver in the whole picture of things. And so I think that we need to be careful. Just take this into consideration. And the last item is urban living. I mentioned that the CO2 levels overwhelm the environment in these huge cities where there's less vegetation, but a whole lot more cars and people breathing out CO2, and just that whole environment is that's if there's any place where CO2 goes up to the atmosphere because of excess CO2, it's in the urban areas. I just want to mention one other thing. This is a major point that has to do with that science is real, what's driving what. The question becomes, does heat increases causes an increase in CO2? Or does CO2 increases cause an increase in heat? So that's a big question. It's which way do you look at that? And in my opinion, if you look at the natural phenomena, there's a whole lot of things on this earth that can cause heat. For instance, I was talking about those cycles. It causes heat. We can be in a heating time period, and the heat itself will increase CO2. I will say that again. An increase in heat will increase CO2. But the vice versa, CO2 can increase heat. But remember, CO2 is a trace gas. So we're saying that CO2 is driving heat? I don't think so. I believe it is heat that drives CO2. So you can determine for yourself what that is, but just look at my video, my lesson on global warming, and make that decision for yourself. But I'm telling you that, in my opinion, it is heat that drives the CO2. I don't want to rehash my whole global warming video, but this will give you some highlights just to show you that carbon dioxide is a trace gas and it's a heavy gas that is very at the very bottom. So this gives you an understanding of why I think that carbon dioxide, being a trace gas, cannot be determining heat. Heat determines the CO2 levels. One other point as far as population growth, there's so much more things that we could be focused on other than CO2, which I think is a farce. But for instance, one of the big things for me is garbage disposal, especially around these big cities. We need to be focused on some of those things and more emphasis put on that than CO2, in my opinion. What exactly does fossil fuels mean? Well, when I was a child, we had Sinclair Oil, which we got our gas, and their mascot was Dino the dinosaur. So we were told that oil comes from dinosaurs. When Epcot opened, I went over to Epcot, and one of the first pavilions to the right is the Energy Pavilion, and a lot of dinosaurs. So we've been told that fossil fuels comes from dinosaurs. Fossils means bones, basically. So does that mean there's a lot of dinosaurs? And I thought that was, even as a child, I thought that was kind of stretching it. So I started thinking. A lot of our energy comes from the sun. The sun hits the plants. The plants, think of the plants as little batteries. And so we humans or animals in general go and eat those plants. For instance, the dinosaurs went and ate the plants. They get some energy from those plants, and then they burn some of that energy. And then the energy is, so if it's truly fossil fuel, the oil comes from dinosaurs, I would think it'd be a very low grade of fuel. The best grade, of course, is where all the plants are. So follow the plants. So with that understanding, I'm thinking, so are we being told the truth? All this time we have been manipulated, I believe, duped, if you will, indoctrinated for other purposes other than the truth. So what is the purpose of calling it fossil fuels, for instance? In my humble opinion, fossil fuels was propagated because if it's fossil fuels and it came from dinosaurs, and dinosaurs are no longer in existence, then fuel, oil, is a depleting asset. But if it's plants, it's a renewable energy. So not so good for the fuel industry or for the solar and wind power people, because we have plenty of oil. And I'm thinking now, I'm a Christian, and I believe that God created us, and so we have all this oil. What's the purpose of the oil? If we don't use this oil, and it's a renewable energy, renewable because of plants on the earth, then pretty soon it might be like Chad Clampett, like the hillbillies. You go out there and shoot, and oil is just going to pop up everywhere. It's going to be seeping in the ocean, and we're going to have a big issue. And so I believe that this is a period of time where we humans are allowed to use this oil. But we need to do it responsibly. I believe in God, so I believe that we were given dominion over the earth to use these resources. But at the same time, we were made caretakers of the garden, and there's a balance between those two. But I don't want it to be the figures fudged for political or biased purposes. Just give us the truth. What is the truth? And in my opinion, that this need for happening right now is a farce for the rich and the famous to make their money off of renewable solar and wind power. And crush the economy. No, we should do everything should be in a natural progression. I just believe that we need to get government out of the way and just let this thing happen naturally.
and I do believe that it's a noble effort to be looking at solar and wind power, and maybe something else in the future. I know they're working on a fission, for instance. Um, but for instance, put a pipe in the ground way down to the center there. That's hot down there, and that pipe will get hot, and you can build steam. There's a lot of things that we could be doing. But to say we need to do it now is we're being duped, and it's a sad situation. I'm just trying to get people to think. So thinking is fun. Just come with me. I just want to scratch your game, man. I don't have all the answers, but I will make you think. I want to give you another way of thinking about some of these things that are being told to us by politicians and in the media and even in academia. I don't have a bunch of PhDs behind my name, so I know I'm not going to be heard as much as many people, but hopefully the 20 or so that watch this video will pass it on. I'm not here to get your money. I'm not here to get your vote. I'm here to give you the truth. I just want to know what the truth is. I'm searching for the truth. Help me. Help me find the truth. I want you to be part of the solution. Help us. Help me. Just don't be indoctrinated. Don't be duped by all of this. Think for yourself. Don't be intimidated because someone's got 3 PhDs behind their name. I believe the next Newton, Einstein, Tesla, you're out there. Come on, come with us, and join us and help us solve some of these issues, these problems. Thank you.
What is fossil fuel means? I stated that fossil fuels refers to bones, therefore to animals, dinosaurs in particular. I'm emphasizing what we have been told and what has been implied in the past. However, the true meaning of fossil fuels includes plants, algae, and other living things. I try to stay simple with these videos. Oil development involves pressure, heat, etc. And I don't want to go into all those different things because it is rather involved. You can do that research. The emphasis has changed. For example, the University of Energy at Epcot closed in 2017, but there are still some that have passed the test of time. For example, Dino the Dinosaur balloon will be in the Macy's 95th Thanksgiving Parade, November the 25th, 2021.
So I believe that a lot of our problems and our situation as far as all of this is government. Just get government out of the way, cut out the regulations. All these regulations where we're giving these big corporation tax breaks, and the tax breaks to bring them to a certain area, and that hurts the small businesses, number one. It hurts it causes congestion in these big cities. If the jobs would just go to places where the resources are, where the people are, or the people follow the jobs in a natural progression. Trying to, when I say population control, some people say, well, you mean you want to build high-rise condominiums and apartment houses out in the suburbs to get the people out? No, I want government out of the way. Just let it happen naturally. So a lot of this urban sprawl, I talk about that in my video on global warming, how if there is a CO2 issues and problems, it's happening in the cities because it overwhelms the vegetation because there's not enough vegetation to take care of the CO2 that's being created. Out in the country or out in the small towns and cities, there's plenty of vegetation to handle all the CO2 that's being created. So a lot of it has to do with government regulations. We just need to get rid of all this regulations. And it's for the rich and the powerful. If you haven't figured that out, it's for the rich and the powerful. The rich and the powerful know where the next project's going to be. They build the roads and they know where the exits are going to be, and they're the ones that's making all this money. And they're paying off the politicians because the politicians are the ones that are approving all these regulations and stuff to determine where those exits are and where the on-ramps and off-ramps of these freeways, and where the freeways are going to be built, and what buildings can be permitted, and it's all being manipulated by government regulation. And so a lot of this population issues that we're having has to do with government regulation. You get government out of the way. So I just want to end with this. As I've said before, primarily I don't want your money, I don't want your vote. I just want you to know the truth. I want you to think, to be part of the process. Come along, and thinking is fun. It's amazing, you can go anywhere you want with thoughts. And I'm trying to scratch that gray matter of yours and come along with me. It's a fun journey. But for now, now you know more of the story. This is John McCamick with Truth University. Good day.